this year is the 60th anniversary of James Bond.
Hmm.
Wow. 60 years. So,
Looking good.
yeah, we're going to be talking spoilery about Daniel Craig's run
Hmm.
as James Bond, our most recent James Bond. He's had the 5 films under his belt,
Hmm.
and yeah, thought we should go through them. We should talk about what we love about them, what we hate about them, our
Hmm.
favorites, what
Hmm.
they meant to us, all that kind of thing. So, yeah, without further ado, Daniel Craig, James Bond, Casino Royale.
Oh my gosh. Technically, this was like 16 years ago. If we're thinking like 2022. Like, I mean, I know it's really more like 15 years, but technically, since we're in a new year, it's 16. And I knew we were just
Yeah.
talking before the show. I can't believe it.
Hmm.
Like, I just can't believe that this man has been Bond for this long,
Yeah.
and there haven't been just like a slew of movies.
Hmm.
There's only been 5. Like, that's averages out to like once every 3 years. And I mean, that's it feels like that's the pace that movies are made nowadays. Like, I know, back when Bond started in Connery's time, like it was a lot quicker. Storylines were not as complicated. Like, you could just get everything going and up and running and you could just crank them out, but I just didn't realize how actually long it's been for Daniel Craig. So,
Yeah.
a salute for 15/16 years of service.
Yeah. I'll um I'll say that so November 17th, 2006, I saw this with your husband down in St. Peter.
I know.
I don't remember what you were doing, but
Chris and I had not met yet.
what? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I suppose we basically just graduated.
Yep,
And so it
2006
was
was our first year of
first.
college.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my god. So yeah, okay, okay, all right. Well,
I
I really
will
don't know what you were doing then.
I will say this is one of the first movies when we first, did meet each other, and started hanging out and realized that we were both, movie
In love?
fans.
Okay.
In love. Um, no, but, both realized that we were like, movie fans. This
Yeah.
was one of the first movies we did watch together. It wasn't
Okay.
the first, but it was one of the first. Um, because
So
we
it's still
both
in theaters? Or you saw
no,
it just
no.
okay, all right.
We were just saw it like hanging out, watching TV
Okay.
together. Um, so yeah, we both quickly realized that like we were both Bond fans. This is one of Chris's all-time favorite Bond movies, Casino Royale. It is high up for me. It's not my favorite Daniel Craig one, but it is up there. It is definitely Chris's favorite Daniel Craig movie.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah, I remember going to that kinda small theater in St. Peter there with
Mhm.
them.
Yep.
It was a good time. I remember, um, though not being enthralled. Like,
Mhm.
I remember being kinda disappointed with the theme song, and
Sure.
then walking away like, "Oh, that's, it's pretty good." So it didn't hit until I bought it later
Watched it again.
and watched it again, and
Same.
I don't I don't know what happened to me because I love the theme song,
Mhm.
and this is one of my favorite movies ever. I,
Wow,
not just in
strong.
yeah, I mean, I say that because when people ask me what's your favorite movie or whatever, it comes up on something, usually now say Jurassic Park,
Okay.
but I've also, in the back of my mind, always considered saying Casino Royale because
Sure.
of how many times I've watched it. I've
Sure.
watched this movie so many times and never gotten
Mhm.
sick of it and always
Mhm.
love it. And So yeah, I don't know. I absolutely love this. I think that it's pretty incredible that so this movie was directed by Martin Campbell, and
Mhm.
he also directed Goldeneye. So he is in charge of
Love Goldeneye.
essentially two soft reboots, two
Mhm.
first films for a new Bond, and Goldeneye was the first to introduce. She's on screen now. M. Judi Dench is M,
Ugh, ugh, so
and
good.
yeah, so it's just a lot of firsts for him, and that quite obviously that's quite a challenge to manage.
Quite a
And both
challenge,
times,
but if I may boldly say, Martin's crushing it.
yes,
'Cause I absolutely love GoldenEye, and I absolutely love Casino Royale. It
yeah.
did, like you, take me a second viewing to love it, but I do. I absolutely do.
Mhm. For all you youngins out there, realize the iPhone wasn't out yet when this movie came out. Like, it does not feel that long
Right?
ago.
Look at his old phone. Look at
I
that
know. Well,
clunky
hit
old thing. Like, clunky but
Sony
tiny at the same
Ericsson's.
time.
Yeah.
Like, it's bulky,
Yes.
but, like, thin. Oh my
Mhm.
god.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think this movie has a great score. I think it
Mhm.
has Eva Green is one of the best Bond girls. She
I
absolutely nails
agree.
her role. This movie brings an emotional weight that is absent from a lot of Bond films. A validity. They bring back Aston Martin
Mhm.
for cars. And we were getting some kind of hokey BMWs for a while. They had some cool Jaguars in the one before, but
Yep.
then they turned invisible, and I think that was the first one they brought Aston Martin back in. But it was like
Yeah.
felt real here and respectful. Um, I don't know. There's so much good
Yeah.
about this movie.
Yeah, to bring back our old favorite phrase, the end of Pierce Brosnan's run, definitely jumped the shark a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, Bond's always had access to cool technologies and, like, things that us mere mortals, could not dream of. Q just, thinks up amazing gadgets for our favorite super spy here. But yeah, I think they kind of realized that they'd really gone overboard um in Die Another Day with the invisible car.
Yep.
And I appreciated the step back into reality
Yep.
here in Casino Royale. Reality, but still cool. You know what I mean? There
Yep.
wasn't a total abandonment, but there was definitely like, let's make sure we're a little more grounded. And I think this movie
Yep.
nailed it really well.
I do have to say I feel bad that John Cleese didn't get more time as follow up Q. You know,
Oh, I
uh,
know.
that's but it's the way it's got to be. And yeah, Mads Mikkelsen as Le Chiffre does great.
Mhm.
We got Felix Leiter back in here. I
Mhm.
don't have a lot of complaints. I don't like the sunglasses that Bond wears in this film very much. I have a complaint about that.
Sure.
Um, and I don't know. I guess the other thing would be that the poker scenes, though done very well,
Mhm.
are they do go on a bit long,
Sure.
you know. But
Sure. Yeah, I think in thinking about this movie, I think for a lot of people it was difficult to wrap their heads around because Pierce Brosnan had been um such a refined, polished Bond that it was hard to get into like a Bond that was a little more slug it out, a little more gritty, a little more real, you know. We're
mhm,
not afraid to like get into street brawls and kill people with our bare hands, which is just something that like Pierce Brosnan wouldn't do, you know.
right.
So I think that there was a lot of like shock for people in like getting to this sort of like origin story where Bond is brutal. Bond is, out there fighting for his life. literally. He's
Yep.
not just like happened to be in some like cute little tussle and then has a quippy one-liner as somebody dies.
Yeah.
So it was I think it was a pretty hard left turn, but I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed getting back to a more real and grounded and gritty Bond who wasn't like totally sure of himself, wasn't obviously going to win every fight. There felt like there were stakes again for what he
Mhm.
was doing and like there was very real possibilities that he was going to lose. And if
Yeah.
we think about the ending, he did. I mean,
Right.
he won fights, but he lost a larger battle in terms of, our Bond girl, Vesper Lind,
Yep. Right.
which I think was another
Yep.
tough thing to take, coming from a string of movies where it was like Bond girl, Bond girl, Bond girl,
Yeah.
they're very
Now this one
disposable.
means something. Yeah.
This one means something. It's really hard for people because they do associate Bond as like such a playboy. It's like having a meaningful, deeper relationship almost is just like off kilter. It's off putting. It's what? Like, why does she get to mean something?
Well, but see, that's part of what I liked about this movie that
Yeah.
um we'll get to where it messed up in the next one, but like
Mm,
they we're seeing the origins of James becoming a double O. And so
right.
he's not I liked the excuse that he's not quite as refined. He's not, he's not always winning. The it opens up with him failing miserably at a
Absolutely.
mission. It's like getting caught at an embassy, like, what are you doing? M gives him a real talking to, all that kind of
Right.
thing. So there's a lot of lessons learned here. And this explains a lot of ways his loose womanizing nature. When you
Yep.
have an impactful relationship like this, you lose that trust, you're
Mhm.
betrayed, and then lose her, even though you loved her incredibly. Like, of course, that those are the kind of things that leave scars. And someone that's in a line of profession where you don't live very long, it
Mhm.
kind of really adds up to making sense for the character.
Right.
Imbibing in a lot of vices and a lot of
Yep.
women, to not
Mhm.
only cover the emotional trauma, but just like kind of pushing aside, like, well, I made this mistake before, not happening again.
Mhm. Yeah, like you said, I really loved the opening on failure, um,
Mhm.
because it does remind us that, like, James Bond isn't invincible, and it does convince us that there are stakes
Right.
because he can lose, and we've just watched him do it. It was actually not to go backwards, but it was actually one of the things I absolutely loved about Die Another Day before it took a huge dive was the
Yeah.
opening where he
Right.
gets
Yep.
caught. L
Yep.
Loved it. I was like, "Oh my god, this is so
Agreed.
different." He
Yep.
failed, he was betrayed, like, he didn't win. It was so unusual, especially in the Pierce Brosnan era, and then, the movie just took a hard left, but I feel like Martin Campbell must have been, like, paying attention to that because he essentially does the same thing in Casino
Yep.
Royale to better effect.
Yep. Yep. Right before we move on to the next film, Quantum of Solace, I
Mhm.
want to plug a thing on YouTube called Being James Bond. It's on the James Bond 007 YouTube page. I watched
Okay.
quite a bit of this before we went live. I didn't quite get done with it. It's like 45 minutes or something like that. But it's basically about Daniel Craig's tenor and tenure here, and
Mhm.
they go through some of the films and talk about hardships and whatnot, and how brutal the media and people were to him when it was announced that he was being cast. Like everything, like it was a
That
whole
doesn't
big thing
surprise
about
me.
being blonde, and then the Royal Navy made him wear a life jacket when he was boated up to the press, and like all kinds of things. And I guess it stemmed from some kids that really didn't approve putting a whole bunch of rumors and all kinds of things that weren't true online. It really got the press reported on all of it like
Mhm.
it was true. And it kind of got to him, it got to the crew.
Mhm.
Um, Spirits were down, and he sort of like he kind of made a turning point that all right, we're just gonna crack on and forget about this because he had confidence in the script. They said the turning point was they had some people like burying themselves in the sand on the beaches, paparazzi trying to like, wait overnight to then like be able to pop up to get a picture, when they're filming. And
Jesus.
someone got the picture of him walking out of the water in his swimsuit. And with
Okay.
that, all of a sudden the media changed. Everybody's like,
Okay.
blonde hunk, all kinds of headlines and stuff. And so it completely turned around.
That's
And
nuts.
yeah. So
I mean, I want part of me wants to say I can't believe people are so superficial like that, but then the other part of me is like, I was definitely when Daniel Craig was first announced, like, you have a blonde Bond. I mean, yeah, physically, like, it just didn't fit my picture of James Bond, so I
Mhm.
had a hard time with it. Did that mean I was gonna, like, shun the character and, like, shun Daniel Craig? No, I was still gonna go see Casino Royale. But yeah, like, I think physical depictions do matter, and when it doesn't line up in your mind with the way you want it to, sure. Like, I can see that there were detractors on that. Do I think it needed to get to such a level? No. Like, obviously people
Right.
need to, like, take a chill. But yeah, I mean, I think but I also think part of my hesitation stemmed from, Roger Moore's tenure as James Bond. Like,
Right. Sure.
like, the combo of suddenly having a blonde, blue-eyed Bond with, I think, the overarching silliness of some of the Roger Moore scripts
Hmm.
made me wary that, obviously we didn't come off of a really strong outing for Bond in Die Another Day, so I was like, "Oh god, like, what's
Yeah.
gonna happen here?"
Absolutely.
Are we gonna lean harder into that? But no.
Mhm.
I was
Think
very
how
convinced
much
once I actually saw him.
think how much harder that would have been. Again, this came out before the iPhone. The internet, I mean,
Oh
obviously
my
it had been around,
god.
but in a
Yeah.
way in its infancy. What about now with Twitter and everything? Like how would
Right.
this, and now I don't know. It's so
Yeah.
yeah. But that's Casino Royale, the 21st entry officially in the James Bond run. An 80 on Metacritic and made worldwide $616 million.
Hmm.
2 years later, also in November, was Quantum of Solace.
Womp
Um,
womp.
so Quantum of Solace, directed by Mark Forster. This one reflected in the Metacritic 58,
Yeah.
and did not make quite as much money either at 589 million. Um, this one was interesting. I've talked about it before, how it was they were dealing with writer's strike
Mhm.
and they were worried about an upcoming actor's strike.
Mhm.
So when they started filming, I just found this out on that YouTube thing again, is
Okay.
they really didn't have a solid script. They started
Hmm.
shooting and they really didn't have much of a script, but they're like, if we don't do this, we're going to be in limbo for, I don't know. So they really kind of hammered things out on the go.
Mm.
And I was refreshing in this little kind of documentary. They admitted a lot of their mistakes and that this one
Okay.
didn't turn out the way they wanted. And they were saying it focused too much on plot and not story. So it's like point A, point B, point C, without
Mhm.
like making it mean something.
Right. How do we get there?
And yeah. So yeah, well, I mean, what are your obviously I can tell, and I mean I know, but what are your
I'm
overall
so good at
thoughts? What are the things that are disappointing to you? And are there anything's redeemable?
I mean, I enjoyed like the overarching exploration of um Spectre. I enjoyed like the fact that Bond didn't get over Vesper Lynd's death, which I think is a running theme to more and lesser extent throughout Daniel Craig's tenure. Um So I love that that character meant something because to me, she was one of the very big, impactful parts of Casino Royale, and to see that, like, storyline carry over, I thought was really cool because it was a commitment to a different type of bond that wasn't just like, even though we showed you, like, this big emotional relationship in the last one, is he's just gonna be like, love him or leave him. Um, I mean, yes, he has new Bond girls and, um, there's relationships there, but there's still, like, a pain that carries
Yeah,
over, and I felt that that was, like, really great emotional depth for Craig to explore. So, I mean, I thought performance-wise, there were solid moments in Quantum of Solace, but like you said, there was no real aim. There was no real point and focus for this script. It was very, like, wandery and things connected point A to point B to point C, but you were like, "I don't really know why I care that point A to point B to point C happened." Like, I know that Bond did things, we traveled here, now we're there, but what are we actually doing? This film felt very lost. Um,
sure.
and as a result, it lost me as an audience member, and I lost, you know, my investment in the movie.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, I agree with those things. I think that, my biggest overall complaint is that when we talk about what he dealt with Vesper in the previous film, he also has a fling that, or he uses his wiles to get information out of a woman in that film as well, and
Yeah.
it's he kind of and then she dies, so he's again learning these lessons, that I feel at the end of Casino Royale, my thought was, well, now he's the James Bond we're familiar with. Like
Mhm.
he's steeled his heart, he is he's not going to have that emotional element. It is going to be jump from woman to woman, whatever. He's just like, we saw how he coldened and sealed
Mhm.
himself off. And so now we're going to kind of have that. But instead, we got a really angsty, angry Bond that was sloppy still. That he let his anger get the best of him to try to achieve whatever he was trying to get done. He really threw things in M's face and didn't, though they had been earning a trust and respect, kind of
Mhm.
like I'm gonna blanking on the word for it, but let that slide in this one. And so I didn't like the Bond I saw, and I didn't think it was
Yeah.
consistent with a character path forward after the previous film.
Mhm. Yeah, like you said, his relationship with M really deteriorated,
Yeah.
and it didn't feel like it served any actual purpose. It was Bond being petulant. It was
Yeah.
Bond sort of like being a teenager
Yeah.
almost, you know? Like this is his like sophomore outing and like, we had Bond as a newbie and now he's like growing pains of, teenagehood or whatever. But it just didn't feel like an adult who should be um handling the responsibilities of
Right.
a
Of the double
spy
O we
working
have.
for
Yeah.
MI6.
Yeah.
So it was just a little like ugh, a little cringe,
Sure.
to use some popular terminology.
Yeah, I mean, another thing Daniel Craig addressed in this little documentary is that he's historically been quite hands-on with deciding things, fashion choices, input on cars, lines, all this stuff, and later films, he's a producer as well. And in this one, he said that he tried to like work some things out with the director, but he decided to commit himself fully to the stunts. And so like
Hmm,
every stunt thing they asked, he said he'd do it, like
okay.
everything. And so he spent all his time doing that. He didn't help then meaningfully with the script and like fixing that. And in turn, he injured himself pretty badly doing stunts.
Sure.
So I think he kind of learned from that through him, and yeah. I mean, we got a film that does have some cool stunts.
I was gonna say this one
But
was
what
particularly action heavy for
Yeah.
sure, but unfortunately, again, it didn't feel like action that meant something
Yep.
overall.
Mhm. And it was a thing of Bond where in a lot of ways it lost its identity. I've said this a lot in the past where
Mhm.
it Bond is best when it's being Bond and not imitating something else. And kind of a popular thing or well-known other spy now was Jason Bourne. That kind
Mhm.
of come into the cinematic world, and it had a different style and a frenetic fight sequence kind of thing. And there was direct things in here that felt very pulled
Mhm.
from Bourne. And we even some of the locations, I think Morocco was in both. And then rooftop chase and the way they did the fights and the camera work, like it just felt like desperate to take that bit
Mhm.
of popular content now and
Mhm.
do this version of it. And it just felt like an imitation then.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I feel like, kind of knowing the context of where this film was placed, with like the writer's strike and, the fear of an actor strike, this was just sort of like Frankenstein together. And it's
yep,
really unfortunate.
it
Um,
is.
I feel like it just should have been scrapped altogether. Like they
Yep.
shouldn't have just tried to like rush it through because yeah, like you said, that if they started with this sort of like, we don't even have a fully fleshed out script where we're just gonna start shooting. Oh yeah, let's, fill in the gaps with like a lot of random fight sequences. Oh, let's like fill
Yeah.
this in and try to like, you know, hide some of our gaps and errors with, imitating a Jason Bourne style and audiences will be like, "Oh my god, it's just
Mhm.
like that. How cool. I loved that." It does feel like this, you know, I don't know, this kind of like identityless
Yeah.
floating generic action film, that doesn't rightfully belong in the Bond sequence, but unfortunately it just is.
Yep. Now, I will say that positives, because
Mhm,
of the way this film is, I don't mind putting this one in ever and just having it on because I do enjoy. I think there's a step up in cinematography, or it starts to get a little more focused on beautiful. Like there's
mhm,
some cool architecture that's focused on,
mhm,
and I like that. Also, I think the fashion takes a step up. I don't
mhm,
know which one. Pierce Brosnan used to wear Brioni suits a lot, and I think
mhm.
and Daniel Craig got known for wearing Tom Ford.
Yep.
I don't know if this is the film that switched. Um, yeah, I feel like it did. If not, they had different tailor or something. Suits were better. We're getting to we're verging on too tight on some of them. Um, but ultimately, sunglasses were better, shoes were better, like the suits were better, like the more focus on car, like all the fun stuff, fashiony, materialistic things were getting
Mhm.
better,
Yes.
and so I enjoyed that from this film. So
Yes. Visual eye candy definitely took a step up.
yeah, yep. Um, all right, Quantum of Solace done. Now we have a bit of a break. It's a bit of a break. So
Yeah.
2008 to 2012.
Mhm.
Um, Skyfall, the 23rd film in the franchise, officially November 9th, 2012, directed by Sam Mendes,
Mhm.
81 Metacritic. This one broke $1 billion,
Yes, it did.
and rightfully so.
Yes. This is absolutely my favorite Daniel Craig Bond film, hands down. Um, I'm not gonna pretend like Casino Royale isn't a close second, but if you ask me to choose, Skyfall is it. Now,
Okay.
is that partially because I am a Judi Dench stan? Probably. Probably. I
uh,
won't lie. I love that, like, M gets to take a step forward and have, like, you know, an actual storyline, and one that, like,
Yeah.
really matters and matters also to Bond in a meaningful way. Like, everything about this script, this story, just tied together amazingly, and I thought played on some beautiful chemistry between Daniel Craig and Judi Dench, not just as M and Bond, but as
Yeah.
people.
Yep.
It just everything that was missing from Quantum of Solace just got poured into Skyfall and
Yep.
made for a brilliant story.
Yep. Agreed. Everything is a step up here. And when I say
Mhm.
Casino Royale is one of my favorite movies ever, it's funny because Skyfall's better. um, it's it is it does so much right. We have a theme song with an opening
Mhm.
that is great. We have and honestly, almost elevating the theme song of a
Mhm.
like creating a new standard in a way. Like you're
Mhm.
just um we have cinematography really going up a notch. There are
Mhm.
some gorgeous things in this film. I think that this was where Quantum of Solace suffered from an identity crisis. We had the Bourne films was competing against the Mission Impossible films that are all about trying to have the next craziest stunt
Mhm.
that Tom Cruise can train himself to do. This was like luxury premium. We sat on shots of you know ships and stuff. um the neon lights of certain
Mhm.
buildings in like China or wherever they go. There's just a lot to really like here.
Mhm.
Again, suits and stuff are on point. The movie just feels premium and
Mhm.
luxurious. It's not trying to have an action sequence every other moment.
Mhm.
Like you say, the story makes sense. We have him on screen now. Javier Bardem
Mhm.
playing the villain here was that perfect line of unique and a little zany, but
Mhm.
creepy and cool too. It's a good blend. You can have the meme or the how what's the better word for it? The really cartoon mustache twirling kind of comic book villain
Oh,
that
yeah, like
that
mustachioed
Bond
villain,
can
yeah.
can go
Uh,
towards.
it's like
But
Snidely Whiplash or something like that. It's like the very,
yeah.
like, twirly mustachios, yeah.
So this just has the right amount of like uniqueness to
Mhm.
him. Impactful story. Um like you say, you point out perfectly the relationship between M and Bond. It's a great closing for her.
Mhm.
Um I just don't know what I don't like about this movie. It's interesting how 2 movies later, we go from the introduction of how James Bond is becoming a double O to 2 movies later. This was, I guess, one issue I get. It feels like there should have been more films in between because now we're dealing with, have you lost a step? That's the
You're
moment.
right.
Like he's like testing his cardio again, doing the training, he's missing the targets and stuff like that. I am a sucker for that kind of story, and it
Mhm.
also grounds Bond in a great way.
Right, again,
So
the failure, the
yeah.
non-superhuman, you know, you've
Yep.
lost a step. I agree with you. If Bond were one of the things that we could do in binge culture, it would feel absolutely shocking. Are you missing a step?
Mhm.
Movie coming just 2 films after his
Yeah.
introduction. Because there were an actual number of physical years between these
Mhm.
movies, there's 6 years between his introduction and his missing a step. It felt like a really long time as an audience
Yeah.
member. So I did buy it, in the sense of the opening sequence setting up really well that James Bond has, been doing things over these years that we haven't seen him. He's grown into his role and, not only is it just like out of the blue, have you lost a step? It's like, have you lost a step because somebody shot you
Mhm.
during a mission? and, like, you decided to just, like, fall off the face of the earth and do nothing. Um, so, yeah, so I thought it was a really clever way to, like, acknowledge the passing of time plus,
Yep.
like, external factors.
Yep. This movie also does something really amazing that it both at once feels like an end of an era, and we do get that with Judi Dench's M going away,
Mhm.
but at the same time, a really new beginning.
Yes.
When it's done, it doesn't feel different. I feel more at home than ever. Like
Mhm.
he's on screen now. We have new Q, we have
Q, yeah.
Moneypenny, we have new
Mhm.
M coming in, Ray Fiennes coming in. It's all new, but at the end we get the like leather bound door, and stuff, and just the familiar office. They're like
Mhm.
calling back to older Bond films. It just feels right. And I
Yes,
would have been completely content with this being Daniel Craig's last film.
I
It's
agree.
it felt like somehow the beginning and the end, and
Mhm.
it was just I don't know. I can't really rave about this movie enough. I think if you're looking at and want to study action films, this is this is the one.
Mhm. Yeah, I would
So,
absolutely have to agree with you. I mean, going back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of action sequences, there are both cool things that are, kind of blow your mind types of stunts, like when we're in like those high rise buildings and,
yep,
James Bond is like scaling the elevators and we're almost falling out and like all of those moments are like whoa crazy moments. But then when you get back to the titular Skyfall and the
yeah,
basically hunting lodge that it's become, not
yeah,
not so much a manor house anymore. It's just like an old fashioned shootout. I mean, it's so grounded and real,
yeah,
but but by that point you're so emotionally invested that it gets your heart pumping just as much as those like riskier, crazier stunts do. You're just
yep,
so invested in the action. So,
yep, yep, exactly. All right, we're in agreement. Um, so that brings us to Spectre.
mhm.
Spectre. We have 3 years. Then November 6th, 2015.
Mhm.
Also directed by Sam Mendes, but this
Mhm.
one drops down to a 60 Metacritic.
Mhm.
And $880 million.
Still,
Um,
I mean, the second highest grossing.
yeah. I mean, coming off of Skyfall, how can you not get people into the seats, right?
Mhm.
And you can advertise it, same director. I
Right?
mean, um, how did you feel about this one?
I felt like I ended up liking this movie more than I thought, but it was hard not to be let down after the pinnacle that was Skyfall.
Okay. Yeah.
When I really sat down and thought about it, I think my initial reaction was disappointment, but I had expected disappointment. Um and when I sat down and thought about it, I thought that there were elements that I liked more than I thought I would. And overall, I liked the movie better than I thought I would. But that was grounded by the fact that I knew I was never gonna like it as much as Skyfall.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was very complicating.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a very it was a very, you know, it was a difficult thing to do because like you said, it felt so much like Daniel Craig could go out after Skyfall, and there was kind of a possibility that he would, you know? I know in this one particular also, he kind of put his body on the line and had done a lot of different stunts and was, like, physically exhausted, emotionally exhausted with playing Bond. Um, but I had also felt that way about Quantum of Solace, and so I thought perhaps Skyfall would be. And then Spectre was coming, and okay, it's not gonna be, you know, Daniel Craig's last outing. Um Yeah, there were a lot of mixed emotions with this movie.
I agree. Mixed emotions is the way to say it because um, when I would have been, I love Daniel Craig, and so it would have been sad for me to see him be done with Skyfall.
Mhm.
I would have been okay with that. And going on to this, I'm like, well, okay, we have the same director, so that kind of got my hopes up.
Right?
When I first saw it in a theater, I profess I enjoyed it quite a bit, but I also had had quite a bit to drink. So my interpretation upon initial viewing was
Having a
not
good
the most,
time.
yeah. And I think what stands up for this film is again the cinematography and the
Mhm.
opening sequence in Mexico City. Having the
Yes.
Dia
Oh, I
de
do
los
love that.
Muertos costumes and the that was great. I really liked it.
I
Um,
agree.
but then the film kind of, for me again, it had a lot of promise. Christoph Waltz, I think, is a great cast as a Blofeld,
Mhm.
um, but incredibly underutilized.
Yes.
Um, this is probably a villain that should have been set up a couple films ago, background entity, and then we spent
Set
some
up
time.
better, I think you mean,
Yeah,
right?
be-
Because like, we
right.
had reference, we had mention, but we didn't have any, like, real understanding.
Yeah, right, because the organization that, I forget what's his face, they're, like, trying to destabilize places, and they get all their
Mhm.
water rights and all that stuff in Quantum of Solace, like, you know, we see, yeah, the big picture here,
Mr. Green, I
Spectre.
think, yeah.
Yeah, mhm, um, but, yeah, ultimately, Blofeld feels wasted,
Yes.
and the film came down to a plot that felt too generic. It was too, Um, I forgot what exactly the threat was. We got a picture of him on the screen right now, Moriarty. But he's um, what were they were trying to do? It's like a data privacy thing was kind of
Mhm.
the issue they were tackling in this film, and I just don't remember how it went down
Yeah.
exactly. But it came to me to be too much of someone's going to destroy the world. Bond has to stop them. We're going to have a big explosion at the end, and it just didn't. I don't know. It felt hollow to me after a while. Alan gave us, let's see, Max Denby have a new joint intelligence service and agent for Spectre heavily involved with their plan to merge
Nine
nine
Eyes
national intelligence
Committee. That's
agencies into. Oh
right.
yeah, that's right. Okay, so that's a cool setup. I think. I
Yep.
don't know. Execution. The first time I watched it again, I enjoyed it quite a bit. Second time I watched it, I really thought it was kind of a letdown.
Mhm.
The gadgets and gags didn't, work for me as much that they tried to incorporate. Um, I thought it was cool to have Monica Bellucci in there,
Mhm.
but she wasn't in there for long. Um, Leah Sado, I simp for Leah Sado, so I guess that's a big positive for me. But, but yeah, I should watch it again, but yeah, it's a mixed bag. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I was reading a little bit about, the plot, and like you said, I mean, and like Alan, thank you, helpfully provided. It is a lot about like intelligence gathering and who gets to have like this sort
Yeah.
of ultimate, surveillance weapon. And is Spectre going to be the one to like take it over from this person who's developed it? It's not always super clear to me in this film how everybody ties in. They just sort of
Mm,
like throw a lot of names at you, and just sort of like, this person is like developing this thing, so now you have to go see this person who's gonna like take you to the next clue. You know, it's a lot to absorb, and it asks you to take a lot on faith without explaining a lot about how Spectre works, what Spectre means, what like Blofeld, who and what he means in, like, the Bond lore. Um, like you said, I think Christoph Waltz was woefully underutilized in this film.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, so it makes the film makes a lot of leaps and expects the audience to get there. And we've talked before about how we hate like spoon feeding the audience, but I think this film holds a little bit too much back from the audience.
Okay. Well, they don't hold back in terms of gadgets because that was another point that
Yeah.
lost me was when he's like being tortured and there's some complicated
Yes.
device coming around.
Chair
It's like,
thing.
yeah, this is unnecessary. It's not.
Nope. Nope. I felt like it was like a weird callback, but also update
Yes,
to
exactly. Goldfinger.
yes. And
Yeah.
I didn't need it.
No,
It
no.
was poor. It was poor update slash
Do you
substitution.
expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond. I expect you to
I expect
die.
you to die.
Yeah. So. So that's that one.
Mhm.
Then we have another sizable break.
Yes.
I
6
mean,
years.
wow, right?
Yeah.
Um, No Time to Die, the newest one, the one that
Okay.
maybe the biggest spoiler warning for everybody.
Before we get into it, I just have to
Okay.
say I can make no promises that I will not at some point call this No Time to Kill.
Okay.
So, if I do, please know I still mean No Time to Die.
Okay. All right. I will know what you mean. No
Thank
Time to
you.
Die, the 25th entry in the Bond franchise, directed by Kerry Joji Fukunaga,
Mhm.
68 Metacritic score, took in 774 million, so
Mhm.
less than the previous entry, the second most for a film, I believe, from 2021.
Mhm.
And I hope that this is still in some second run theaters or whatever.
Sure.
And then there is that supposed to be limited re-release in IMAX today.
Right.
So hopefully that's available somewhere. I'm I'm hoping that this movie can creep up a little further yet. Um, what'd you think of it?
I really enjoyed it, actually. I think part of the enjoyment for me was start to finish knowing this movie was a swan song for Daniel Craig, and it
Mm,
really felt like it was a platform designed for that. And so I felt like a lot of the pressure for me was taken off, where I could just like sit back and enjoy Daniel Craig as Bond, like enjoy some fan servicey things to sort of like, do a little head nod to different parts of his tenure as Bond and not have to worry too much about plot. But in the end, the plot surprised me for being stronger than I thought it was going to be.
sure.
So like
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised at like, hey, this is like a plot I think I actually care about. It's a good story. It's not maybe um the most grounded in reality that, Bond has ever been, but like it's a credible threat. It's immediate. It makes sense where everything is coming from. And I think the only real major drawback for me was Rami Malek. His
Okay.
villain um just didn't have a lot going for him. He was so interesting as a concept, but I don't think he was given enough to do.
Okay.
Eh, I mean, maybe it was like Remy Malek's acting choices, I don't know, but I just didn't really feel threatened by him.
Okay. All right. Sure. Um, yeah, again, this is the first Bond film in a long time that I didn't see right away in theaters, basically.
Mhm.
And I've expressed before being very disheartened at sort of the early press and the weird, like,
Mhm.
roller coaster ride of a, release cycle,
Yes.
stop, start kind of thing. Um, it was it was pretty, and then my disappointment in the last film. I think if I had
Mhm.
really loved the last film, I think I could have weathered those ups and downs better. But I really wasn't super anxious to see this, sadly, as a big Bond fan.
Mhm.
So when I got to watch it, I was pleasantly surprised. I really liked it. I thought it was very well done.
Mhm.
I'd never heard of this director. It's very young.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't have a lot of complaints. um, things I it does You're right, it does feel like, there's a lot of appreciation for the past, a lot of head nods and stuff like that. There's a portrait at one point of previous M in the hallway. That's great.
Mhm.
I kept getting theme song notes from other Bond films throughout the
Mhm.
film. I'd be like, I
Mhm.
can't quite place which one that's from, but it's
Mhm.
being used here. So I appreciate Hans Zimmer's effort in that. And the film
Yep.
actually wraps up with just straight a song from a different Bond film.
Mhm. It
Um,
does.
so I think that's cool as well. Um, Le Motif, what's that, Alan? Am I missing something? I'm out of the loop here. Um, there is let's see.
Yeah, it's a
s-
yep.
Oh, dominant recurring theme. Okay. Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
it's
It's like what you associate, like, with, it's like a musical passage that you associate, like Darth Vader.
yeah.
Do you immediately hear music in your head?
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
Jaws or whatever. Yep.
Yep,
Mhm.
exactly. So, like, it's a basically a musical association. Yep.
Yep. I mean, how do you see a shark and not think those few
Dun-dun.
notes? Yeah. So, yeah, I think Bond films are known for their crazy openings and had a good opening shot, like scene. It was just the way the camera worked on it and stuff. Again, keeping up some of the cinematography values there. Um, we have all the time in the world, using that line. I wrote that
Mhm.
one down. Um, let's see what else I like. And they had I liked seeing Felix back, and I thought it was kind of a
I
good
did
comedic
too.
relief to have that annoying guy they called the Book of Mormon, whoever. That was
Oh, Logan
fun seeing
Ash?
him. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Um, I was proud of myself. I was looking at the phones in this film. It's like, okay, what kind of phone is this? Because Sony doesn't have anything to do with these films now. This
Mhm.
film has nothing to do with Sony. And it's like, is it Nokia or Motorola? And then later they showed it was Nokia, so I was happy about that. Um, he had lots of puns in here,
Mhm.
puns galore. So yeah, I liked a lot. It was emotional. Again, Lea Sedol being back, wrapping up that story. I thought they started the movie off emotionally.
Mhm.
Having that split was pretty powerful, and then it gave a lot of weight to Billie Eilish's song as well.
Yes.
Like when that credit sequence started to roll, and we had that theme, it meant a lot more all of a sudden.
Mhm.
So it elevated the theme for me.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
Billie Eilish did a really great job. I actually really loved the theme song for this movie.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure I was going to, and then, like you said, it really fit tonally with the film. Um, yeah, really enjoyed the credits. I do have to say, I don't know that we mentioned this, but I did love, like, the film's opening sequence being about Madeline Swan rather than James Bond.
Sure.
It was
Yeah.
cool. It was a fun way to, like, introduce a villain for a film, um, and introduce, like, how important another character was gonna be in this film. And
Yep.
again, I thought, like, beautifully shot. Like,
Yep.
cinematography was just, like, on point.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. There was a really good, I love the focus on the cars. Callbacks
Mhm.
again to, there's a older V8 saloon Aston Martin. That's, I guess, a callback to one from The Living Daylights, Timothy Dalton film. The DB5, the car chases were really well done. They're very frenetic.
Mhm.
I bought them. It was the a right amount of, I don't know, the tension when the car is just getting shot at, and Bond's like sitting there like, am I going to, I have another person that I feel has betrayed me, love of my
Right.
life. Like I've let someone in
Right.
again. Am I just gonna let him bust through?
Right.
Do I just
Like,
let it happen?
maybe.
Yeah. And so I like that drama. I like that we
Mhm.
get you know, it's very sad with Felix.
Oof.
Um
Yeah, that was rough.
so is like a lot, they managed to do the things that I think they've done best in the Daniel Craig time as Bond and make it emotional. Make
Mhm.
there be a meaning things, make there be a weight.
Mhm.
And I think that this film really brought that back when the last one was missing it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there could have been a weariness in this film at using Bond has retired again. And now
Yes.
we're like somehow bringing him back for service. And this film managed to skirt that really well. Like with the
Mhm.
emotional weight of Madeline's potential betrayal, like you really felt that. Um, and like, you know, Felix being the one to draw Bond back
Yep.
in instead of like MI6 coming after him. I think there was really clever ways of, you know, tugging at our heartstrings in one direction about, oh, we thought, he was riding off into a happily ever after. There's now a betrayal. We can't let it sit too long though. And now, oh, look, we have another old friend coming back, drawing Bond in, and we need like a distraction from this betrayal. Really well done.
Yep.
Like nods
Yep.
to Bond's past and also using a familiar trope, but in a better way.
Yep. And then we get a really fun, I love the sequence in Cuba. And I think
Mhm.
that the Bond girl we meet here is a lot of fun. She has
Yes.
a spice of personality that is, it's almost like a callback to ditzy Bond girl of some other films, but then she's like super capable. So
Yes.
she's just fun. She's
Yes.
fun to watch, and
And
their
this film needs
interactions
that.
together are good. Yeah, it needed that brevity, and
Yep.
this provided that. So, and then it got dark. Everybody's just like skin is
Right.
bubbling and stuff. But yeah.
Right. No, but I mean but like you said, we needed that break for a little bit because we went through a lot of heavy things in very short order and we needed some lightness. We needed some fun. We needed some good old-fashioned James Bond dressing up, going to a party, you
Yep.
know, having a sexy Bond girl with him. Like you said, it doesn't mean she can't be capable. Um, but, she just needed to just bring it up a little bit and bring Daniel Craig up out of it.
Hmm. Yep.
So, yeah, kudos to Ana de Armas for that.
Yep. Um, I want to talk a little bit because we kind of gone through what they mean, our general thoughts on the films or whatever. But like, if we can, let's talk a little bit about the theme of the film and just I put, like I started writing the quote like "Road to Hell." "Road to Hell is paved with good
Mm.
intentions." So just
Oh, sure.
with the idea that this is on M. This is a
Mm.
secret project. It's oh, it was never designed for this kind of thing. When it's pointed out, it could be used for mass genocide and all this stuff. And then you get the dilemma at the end, like, do I do this? Do I fix my mistake at the expense of my terrible mistake being exposed? So it's
Mhm.
a good character moment for him. But then also just a debate, I guess, like where is the line for good intentions? Where is the
Mhm.
line for this? Like, is it understandable for someone to be like, well, we have this nanotech essentially that we can use to eliminate collateral damage. We
Mhm.
can have very specific targeting, with zero unintended consequences,
Right,
unintended
repercussions, yeah.
deaths and stuff. Yeah. But obviously, that's in the eye of the beholder who wields such great and immense power.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's believable enough for, like, the next stage of development of, this kind of warfare. Like, when you think of where things have already gone and technologies that we already have, like, think about, the development of drone strikes. Well,
Hmm.
that was designed to prevent casualties you know, on behalf of, like, the pilot who doesn't need to be there and doesn't need to, get shot back at and therefore
Yep.
die in whatever strike. So I feel like human nature is always looking towards developing that technology that is going to do like the necessary thing with the least amount of damage.
Yep.
So this felt very believable to me, and it felt very real that M developed this, like you said, with good intentions. Um, and us in our outrage in the movie, after like it's completely gone awry, we can still feel that outrage, but we also feel, I think, at least for me, that empathy of like, "Gah, I know you thought this was gonna go well, but like, did you really not think like this could fall into the wrong hands? Like,
Right.
oh, were you like naive like that?" I don't know. It's really hard because, hindsight is 2020, so of course, us in the movie seeing how badly it all goes, it's like, obviously this was always gonna go terribly, but, it is at times hard to fault someone for those good intentions. Like I think about, Avengers: Age of Ultron. Tony Stark, like, develops Ultron with this really great intention of, like, keeping the peace, and, like, what if, Avengers didn't have to respond to all these threats, and, like, lives weren't on the line like this, and we could stop threats before they start. Terribly, terribly wrong, but the intention there is good.
Well, look at it this way, and this is very obviously very much more benign example, but when you're, um, if you have to write a check for something, that's a process. Like it means something because it takes time to write a check. Or if you have to
Mhm,
pay someone in cash, you have to get
mhm,
cash, you see the dollar amounts and you give it to someone. If
mhm,
you have a credit card stored in something and you have a game and you have a bunch of microtransactions available to you, it's really easy to just push a button and buy
mhm,
more and buy more and buy more. It removes all like feeling of consequence. And so
mhm,
part of the issue, and I think they've talked about this in Bond movies as well, is with drone strikes or whatever, when you can push a button
mhm,
and eliminate a life, the consequence isn't there. No one looks that person in the eye to see them die. No one has to risk their own life. No one has to order their own men to go and risk their own life to do this. That sets
mhm.
a threshold of importance on the target, the goal, whatever, the asset, when the stakes must be worth it, the
Mhm,
risk. So on the one hand, I completely understand the idea of, well, if we can just have robots wage war for us, we can just hit a button and missile strike whoever we feel like, and they're just done without any risk to our own soldiers. And of course, that's easy for someone to say that's not in that risk. Um, the why, of course, that's a benefit.
mhm,
But to me, maybe bigger picture, or at least this is the quandary, is what I've discussed with the impact and the understanding, the needing that burden of
mhm,
of consequence to temper your actions.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Um, I mean, this movie, I think it gets a little bit convoluted in the sense of, like, on the one hand, this was developed as, like, nanobot technology that would be this sort of, like, push a button, these nanobots go, like, attack whoever their DNA encoded to attack. And then it sort of gets a little bit twisted in the fact that, like, these people carry nanobots in their skin and, like, touches end up killing people. So there is a
Right.
weird, like, still human element of risk. It's so much more minimal than, like, somebody fighting to get somebody and, like, shoot them with a
Right.
gun or something, you know what I mean? It's much more casual, but there's still this weird sort of, like, it's robots, but it's people.
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, this
Yep.
this movie, I think, like, starts out with the idea that it is so remote, and then it gets so very personal.
Yep.
And I like that about this movie, but I think that the consequence is lost a little bit. Or the idea that this is being developed and it's a little bit more consequence free or maybe conscience free because
Mhm.
you don't have to send somebody into that much danger, but then it, like, kind of flips around and
Yep.
we lose that moral dilemma because it does become so personal and consequential for Bond.
Well, and I think that's one element, and the other is in all this stuff. So when we talk about AI or in weapons of mass destruction, whatever it may be, bioweapons, it's um, the from an individual's perspective, that you have your own goals and allegiances and whatever. You're like, okay, well, you believe you're in the right, you're doing this thing. And
Mhm.
though what I develop could fall in the wrong hands, if I don't do this, someone else that's our enemy is going to do this first because
Mhm.
there is we're not in a echo chamber, we're not in a sandbox with one or two players. When we're on a worldwide scale, there's absolutely going to be people that have ultimate control and no uh like second thoughts hardly on what they're doing and the potential consequences. The goal is to win,
Mhm.
and consequences be damned in a way. So that's to me the question Mallory asks himself or must have is, well, I see the good in this. I see the potential good available here. The way to reduce casualties. Yes, there's a danger, but if we don't do this, if we don't get this tech first, if we don't harness this, we're going to be behind and someone else is going to do it. And it's going to mean the end of us because that's absolutely the world. And that's, I mean, if you listen to certain people, like the idea of whoever gets to general artificial intelligence first runs
Mhm.
the world, So like
Right.
there's those kind of like larger threats to humanity and to civilization that, Bond tries to tackle at different points. And to me, that's where this goes.
Mhm.
And why I can sympathize, and it makes it a difficult decision. Like,
Yeah.
fundamentally, I kind of reject the idea that anyone or any entity should wield such power,
Mhm.
but I also am in the real like a realist in the terms that there are people out there that if they can, they absolutely will.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's so funny because in in thinking along those lines, like, you basically end up developing that technology for the very people you're trying to keep it from. As this
Yes.
movie very adeptly points out, like, if M hadn't been of that mindset and, like, well, somebody else is going to develop it, so we better develop it first. It it may have been years before it was actually developed,
Yep.
um, but instead M, like, pushes that cycle forward and then just, like, sort of serves it up on a silver platter for Rami Malek's Safin to steal and be
Yep.
like, "Cool, thanks. Totally appropriated this. Really
Yep.
fits in with what exactly my plans are, so thank you for
Yep.
developing that, and I didn't have to do the work."
Yep. So, in this complicated issue that can be spanned across many things in
Mhm.
life and in the future to come, can we say that the best course of action is one of a preventative nature instead? So as opposed to like, well, it's inevitable, this crazy technology is going to happen, this crazy powerful tech, maybe our resources are better spent at preventing our enemies from developing said tech. Everybody spies on everybody to try to figure out what they're capable of, what
Mhm.
technologies you're developing. Maybe, like you said, maybe that this kind of technology in this universe would have been very far off had they
Mhm.
not like kind of found the way and pushed that forward and funded it.
Mhm.
And so maybe just like trying to do what they can to make sure others don't have developed such a thing is a better use of resources. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, um, who knows, like, what sort of funding went into developing this project that could have, like, been aimed at, you know, saying, like, we're entering into an agreement or, like, saying above board that we're, not gonna be doing this, and then below board, basically sabotaging anybody or,
Yeah,
slapping
right.
sanctions on, like, an
That's what
organization
the
or a
double O's
country
are
that, like,
for.
does. That's a what?
Yeah, that's what the double O's are for. You
Yeah,
send them in, oh, they're
exactly,
developing this
exactly,
thing, yeah, yeah,
right? So, yeah, so, I mean, yeah, I mean, this is, like you said, road to hell paved with good intentions. I mean, Mallory was obviously trying to do what was in his mind a good thing and, minimize, personal casualties for his double O's,
yep,
and ended up costing a great deal more than he ever thought possible.
yep. Um, so I actually did like Rami Malek's character quite a bit. I could have used a little more time with his motivations
Mhm.
personally. I think that was probably the biggest thing missing, as opposed to just someone that's, I understood why he wanted to take out Spectre. That made sense. But beyond that,
Yeah, and
um,
then
you know,
I
yeah,
MI6 and Bond and
yep.
yeah.
That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, when I say I was disappointed with Remy Malek's villain, I don't mean that I was disappointed with Remy Malek per se, but I just didn't feel it like his character was fully developed. I felt again that he was a great actor underutilized,
Sure.
in
Yep.
terms of being given a story, much like Christoph Waltz. I did love, speaking of, loved his appearance in this movie. It was great.
It's a lot better
Like,
than previous one, yes.
yes. Um, I mean, it was both like a great plot advancement and something obviously that was like, oh my, there he is again. There's a little
Mhm.
callback for, Bond's tenure, um, or for Craig's tenure. So yeah, so I love um that moment in the film. But yeah, I just felt like I needed more out of Rami Malek's villain for him to be like
Sure.
one of the great ones, I guess. I mean, he was fine.
Sure.
He just, when I think of like Bond villains, he's not ranked in my top 5.
Sure. So, why do you think that this film was was met with such a cool reception for many? We see again on Metacritic it's sitting at a 68.
Mhm.
So
That
that's
actually surprises
better.
me.
Yeah, it's better than Spectre and definitely better than
Mhm.
Quantum of Solace, but
Mhm.
solidly behind Skyfall and Casino Royale.
Yeah, it's funny because when you look at it, in general, I would agree with, like, the rankings that these scores place these films at. Like Skyfall number 1,
Sure.
Casino Royale number 2, No Time to Die, not kill, at number 3, and then Spectre, Quantum of Solace. Overall, that's how I would rank Daniel Craig's films as Bond. Um, but it does surprise me that No Time to Die isn't, like, doesn't have a higher score.
Sure.
Um,
Mhm.
and I think because it was divisive on, it being so fan servicey to Craig. I think some people
Hmm.
felt that that really worked and really enjoyed it, and some people didn't. Like, from the reviews I've read from critics, one critic was like, "Yeah, if I just imagine this as, like, we're just, like, giving Daniel Craig a movie, I really enjoyed it. If I
Hmm.
thought of it as, like, a separate movie in and of itself, I didn't like it."
Interesting.
And then another critic, um, thought that, like, everything was really well paced, like, the storyline was spot on, but it was, like, performance-wise, not his favorite, like, the actual actors
What?
themselves, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
it's
like, very,
I
very divisive opinions, very, like, all over the map. It was really hard to read this one.
I think it was honestly the the previous film being generally considered a disappointment, and
Mhm,
then the long waits for this one. So I think it was just I mean, again, for me, I think it helped because my expectations were lower. But
sure.
maybe for other people, they just were maybe they're already kind of done with this iteration of Bond, you know?
Mhm,
And the drawn out release schedule. I don't know. I didn't find a lot to not like,
mhm,
short of a couple motivations. There's a lot of emotional elements, and yeah, there were callbacks, but nothing was nothing was cringy or on the nose or really like
mhm.
blatant fan service.
Nothing
Like
felt
the
shoehorned in there, yeah.
yeah, the puns made sense without it being too like wink wink.
Mhm.
And who's going to complain about like the classic cars? And I just the theme, the musical elements, I don't know, I just
Great
don't know what.
settings.
Yeah, I don't think the cinematography is quite as good as the previous two, but I still very much enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, I don't I don't get it. And then like the reveal of the child,
Mhm.
Bond having a kid. I thought that was pretty cool.
Be honest, did
So,
you never not think she was his kid?
no, I'm
Like,
like,
I
well,
really
the thing
did. I was like, "She's his."
I put in the comments, "Ooh, a child." Um, Assuming, okay, it's like the right age and all that stuff. So, yeah, it didn't ring true that like so shortly after they split that she would have just all of a sudden gotten pregnant.
Right,
Or even during, that would have been, or something like that, because it's just the timing fit, that
right.
way. So, um, yeah, and again, love Lea Sedol, so,
Mhm.
um
What, I mean, this is kind of the biggest, I think, plot element that we haven't gotten to yet. What did you think of the
yeah.
new 007?
Oh, okay. I mean, I didn't like her at first because she's their kind of our foil, or really, it was like the feeling threatened, I guess, probably
Mhm.
is the idea, "What are you doing back here, old timer?"
Yeah.
Um But ultimately, I came to like her, and, I thought the little kinda showdown again, in Cuba made sense, was fun to get to see her, kinda face off and how that went. And then, the how she came to respect him. She
Yes.
understood, like, what he was going through, what he's lost, what he has um, at stake, and said, "Hey, he should take his 007 status back," and then they worked well together at the end. I thought
Mhm.
I thought it was she was a good addition to MI6.
I agree. I really thought all of that kind of tracks with human interaction generally. I mean, when you
Hmm.
think like, "Hey,
Yeah,
I've taken over. I've earned this spot. What are you doing coming back here?" Like you feel threatened by things like that. I felt like they played that well. Again, like we're resurrecting Bond, kind of from a retirement and bringing him back into MI6 and bringing him back into the fold. But we've got like these new ways of doing it, and having a new 007, you know, was a really great way to like bring him back in, but also like kind of keep him at arm's length for a little bit and
yeah,
like create that tension of, you know, is he really coming back? Is he really not? Like, is there a place for James Bond at MI6 anymore? Are we really moving on? You know, and is this the future? And yeah, then like you said, kind of resolving that through the movie, um, the two characters working well together and going on that like
yep,
final mission. I thought that was a really great job.
yep. So we have to, of course, talk about the
The
biggest
biggest,
spoiler.
biggest.
Yeah. Um, James Bond dies. So we have to, and
Yeah,
I thought maybe they would leave like some room for question, when it was like looking grim,
me too.
but they did not. They
No.
absolutely, I mean, he was engulfed.
Yes.
So I think normally I think it speaks to how good the film is that I was okay with this.
Yeah, you weren't upset.
Um, yeah, because I mean, for the story, it makes sense. And,
Mhm.
there are things that when you have a perpetual series that, was this 25th official film, since 1962, um, there's, you run into those things where you don't have any emotional impact if some dramatic things don't happen. And
Mhm.
so Craig calling it quits on his run, and this Bond, seeing an end. I don't know. It fit. It was emotional for,
Mhm.
um, you know, his love and his now known child, and for everyone else there. But it's kind
Mhm.
of unrealistic as well for the world's greatest double O to never, to live to old age.
Mhm.
Uh, so I don't know. How did this resonate with you?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be more upset about it, and I was upset in a um I can't believe he died kind of way. It's such a tragic circumstance. Um, you know, to have been reunited and met a child, um, only to be, obviously horrifically torn from them. Um,
Mhm.
but it makes sense because how would we move forward
Yes.
with any sort of storyline that way? How would we move
Yep.
forward um with a child that and a love that he could never see? How would we move forward with like knowing James Bond as a dad? Like would we in the back of our minds knowing that and knowing he continues to be a double O feel like he should be holding back somehow because he's a parent? Would there be
Right.
some, I don't know. I think there's always something when people are parents that, you think like, you should be more careful because you have a child to
Right.
live for and you have to like protect them. I don't think James Bond is as effective that way. So, yeah, it really made sense at the end of this. It was like beautiful emotional stakes. Um, it was great because, they gave us that. tease of hope that he was getting off the island, mission success, great job, just kidding, you
Yep.
know, one last final twist and he has to stay. So yeah, all around this really made sense. And I think Chris and I, when we were talking about it afterwards, it felt very satisfying because it felt like a clean slate to take a break. We don't, I mean, Bond is now dead. We don't have to rush into a new film. We don't have to rush into a new recasting. We can take some time, maybe some, real extended time to think about what's next.
Yep.
Because that is one thing that the film did do is um promise that James Bond will return.
Yep. Right.
And it very
Yep.
specifically said James Bond, not 007, which I
Right.
think is a very telling clue about, you know, talk about 007 being rebooted as a woman, as a different character. Obviously, we were introduced to a 007 in this movie, but I think that ending title card makes it very clear that she's not going to be James Bond 007.
Right. Yep. Yeah, so that's the question, I mean, well, firstly, would it have been satisfying for him to get away and drive off into the sunset with his woman and child, and then we have our cut. Daniel Craig's gone. It's whatever, and break. Would that have been? I mean, obviously, we don't have the emotional impact of the
Mhm.
loss, the tragedy. So that takes something away.
Yeah.
But you do end on a happier note that adds something. I don't know. Ultimately, I don't know which is better, but I think that I don't know. Whereas I maybe would have expected this to really upset me, I was okay with it because of the how it contributed
Mhm.
to the drama. And it also helps knowing that at this point in time, they don't have any intention of just like, well, okay, James Bond's dead. We're just gonna do something else now. It's
Mhm.
gonna be 007 and not him.
Mhm.
Um, Knowing that helps as well. That
Mhm.
they're not just throwing away the character, they're
Mhm.
throwing away a section. They're closing a
Right.
chapter with this
Right.
character. Because it made me think about, you know, how Bond is set up, and it's kind of a freeing thing where everything else is always like, how does this fit into the canon? Where does this go time wise? How is all this stuff? Bond is kind of whatever.
Yeah.
The only chronology that really matters for this is Daniel Craig's run.
Mhm.
That's it. It's kind of a self-contained. The rest of the Bond things, yeah, there's callbacks and nods and stuff like that. It's like it happened, but kind of didn't
Yeah,
because
they're
it's
callbacks to people, they're callbacks to things, like hallmarks of James Bond, but they're not callbacks to events.
right.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? It's not like they're walking around being like, "Hey, remember this gold bar we picked up from Goldfinger?" Like, you know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
not like that kind of reference. So like you said, the Daniel Craig era is really self-contained. It just nods
Yep.
to hallmarks of the franchise rather than specific moment.
Yep. Like it's there's no previous James Bond film in on Your Majesty's Secret Service, James
Mhm.
Bond does get married, and then
Yep.
she immediately dies. There's obviously no
Yep.
reference to that. It does not fit into Daniel Craig's timeline or anything like that at all. Like, and I just think that's kind of what keeps the series fun and allows them to be inventive,
Mhm.
because how can you not after so many years? You can't pigeonhole yourself like that.
Right.
So where do you think they go? Who does some people stay? What do you I mean, what's next? I know people have talked about maybe spin-off, so maybe James Bond will return, but maybe there is a spin-off that focuses
Mm.
on um, the 007 we meet in here or something like that. There's been talks for a long time about doing a young James Bond series, like a TV series.
N
Um,
no, thank you.
yeah, I'm
That's my
I'm
first
opposed to all of these things. I'm
yeah,
opposed to all of them. I just
I agree.
I want a break. I want a
Yep,
like you say, meaningful break,
yep,
and then let's just come back with you know, with more of the same, but in a fresh way,
yes.
which is gonna be tough, but
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because I am attached to some of the characters, um, but that
so they
doesn't
keep them.
mean yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean they can't keep them. I mean, obviously, like, John Cleese, Judi
Yep,
Dench, I mean, they spanned
yep.
multiple double O's. Um, so yeah, so I mean, I would not be sad to see Ben Whishaw come back as Q. I wouldn't be sad for Naomi Harris to come back as Moneypenny. Um, Ray Fiennes, I don't know. I mean, he was looking a little on the older side in No Time to Die, so I don't know. I
I
could like
think that was a call to re a reminder of the original M.
yeah,
Like,
I do, but I just mean, like, it would be harder for me to see him come back depending on some length of time, you know?
hmm,
Like, if
maybe.
we're waiting, like, another 6 to 8 years, I feel like I don't know, I would,
He's just
like,
older and more
put that on
stately,
pause.
s more wizened, you know?
I mean,
Um,
M's always older, but he's not like, your grandpa, so
I mean,
there's a line there.
Look at Ray Fiennes in The King's Man.
I know.
Doesn't look too old to me. I think this was a apparel stance. He kinda did the Winston Churchill kind of,
Sure,
like, lean back. He's just like,
sure.
I don't know, it just felt like they almost aged him up,
Yeah,
on
yeah.
purpose. Maybe they were
Ray
making
Fiennes
him
is one
drink
of those, like
more.
yeah, Ray Fiennes is one of those, like, people that I never actually know how old he is. He looks like he could be 40 for, like, 20 years. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, I'm not actually sure how old he is. Oh, he's 59, okay. So, yeah,
Okay.
he still looks like he
Yeah.
could be in his 40s, but, like, if you wait another 8 years, 10 years to make a movie, like, you might be pushing it a little bit.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I don't go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I I want now that Daniel Craig has died, I really want a
Daniel Craig's
fresh
died?
sorry, Daniel Craig's
Oh my
Bond is
god.
what I was starting to
Another
say.
one?
2022, why? Um, Now that Daniel Craig's Bond has died, I really do want, like, a fresh new start. It felt like to me that the closing of this, um I preferred it to him, like, driving off into the sunset, you know, living happily ever after. I felt like the emotional impact of this, I felt it both for the character and for Daniel Craig in the sense of, like, we all just, like, breathed a sigh of release, like, "Ah, it's done. He's released. There's no way he could come back." Like, I just felt this, like, weight off of all of our chests because Daniel Craig has had so much, like, emotional baggage around Bond.
Right.
So I feel like it would behoove them to carry none of that forward and just wait, total reboot a ways into the future. Do not do a TV series about young Bond. I don't even know what that would be, and ugh,
No.
yuck.
Yeah.
Um, I wouldn't mind seeing this 007, and I forget the actress's name, so I apologize for that, but I really liked her. I wouldn't mind seeing her in an action movie, but I don't need to see her as 007. Do you know what I mean? Like, I am
Okay.
happy to watch her. She's great. She did a fantastic job. Um, it's a very delicate balance to Lashana Lynch. Thank you. It's a very delicate balance to step into, however briefly, a very beloved character's shoes and sort of assert yourself because you can get that fan backlash. She did it very well. The character was well written. So, yeah, go off, go star in another action movie. Just like, don't let's have a spin-off. So many
Right.
things have spin-offs, and I don't need spin-offs of James Bond.
Yeah. So I think I'm I think I'm okay with a couple routes. I'd be okay with the route you suggest where we're just like basically a complete reboot, all new people, um, fresh start. I would also I think be okay with a lot of the returning characters. We can still need the break, we still need the pause, but
Yes,
so it feels familiar. We have an attachment to it's not, you know, if we have an attachment to what's come before, but it can still feel different.
sure.
And we can kind of just ignore what's come before, even though we have familiar faces. My concern is just how far do they take the idea of fresh new idea? Because we have some big swings sometimes. So when we go
Mm,
from Sean Connery, he starts getting sillier and stuff, but then we go to Roger Moore and it really goes off the deep end, and then we kind of whiplash back to a more serious Timothy Dalton.
yeah.
And they kind of ease into it with Living Daylights, and then it gets more serious in License to Kill. But where does this next thing go? I'm just,
Mhm.
you know, I think that ultimately, uh, the family here has done a good job of stewarding the franchise over so many years. So I can't think that they don't stand a good chance of continuing that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm worried about what's to come. So ultimately, I think I'm just gonna sit and be happy that I was happy with this one. So
Mhm. Yeah, it was a well done, pardon the language pun, swan song, for Daniel Craig. Um, yeah, and it was a very satisfying catharsis for this series to end the way it did. Um, I I mean, there's always like a part of me that doesn't or does regret that like he couldn't have gone out on something as strong as Skyfall, but I think this was miles better than going out on something like Spectre. So I'm
yep,
ultimately glad this movie got made to pay tribute to an actor who did a really great job shepherding Bond into
the
our era,
21st century.
our
Yeah,
our 21st century, yeah.
yeah. Alan says full name Ralph Nathaniel Twilston Wickham Fines. Is it not Ray Fiennes?
It's Rafe, yeah.
Yeah, I would say I've heard
But it's
like
it's
from
spelled that
people's
way. It's spelled
okay,
like Ralph, but it's
okay,
pronounced
yeah,
Rafe.
okay, yeah. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Thank you for phonetics.
yeah.
Can you provide
Well, I want to
phonetics on
end.
the whole name? Because
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. I
know
need some
John
help
was
with some of
taking a
those other ones.
guess, and I didn't have any better
Yeah.
ones.
Well, I want to end on the
Twistleton?
quote of which I respect greatly.
Mm,
Despite the writer of the quote, the proper
mm.
function of a man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. Jack London. And M, of course, read that at the end,
Mhm.
and I approve of this quote. I might put it as my new email, like ending signature. But
Mhm.
yeah, so that's James Bond. That's Daniel Craig's run. It really does feel like in the end of an era.
Mhm.
I'm glad I got to finally watch it and we got to talk about it.
Mhm. Me too.
So I'm excited to get
Well,
more people's opinions on it.
Before we sign off, I have to know officially on air, so it's on record. Where does Daniel Craig sit in your roster of Bonds?
Yeah, I don't know. It's really tough.
I
It's really
know,
tough.
I know.
Um, you know, I think for what he's brought to the franchise, he has to be my favorite
Okay.
because I really like Timothy Dalton, but he didn't
Mhm.
have enough of a chance,
Sure.
you know. 2 films, one of them was a little goofy, the next one very good. Yeah, he just didn't have enough of a chance. Um, Pierce Brosnan, I absolutely love because, I mean, he wasn't the first Bond I saw, but I really connected with him. I
Mhm.
really like how cool he is. It didn't hurt that he had such a great opening film to come
Mhm.
in with. Goldeneye is just classic. It is so good.
Agreed.
Um, being right across from Sean Ben, I'm gonna say Ben. We're gonna go along with your
Bean Ben.
interpretation. Yeah. Um, and all the well, I could go on, but that and then Sean Connery is the original, so like they all a lot have a lot of strengths. But I think the acting weight that Craig brings, the care that despite his like frustrations with bursting into being a household name and some
Mhm.
of the whatever, I think the care that he brought to the film, wanting to work with Sam Mendes to begin with. I guess,
Mhm.
in this little documentary, the way it was written in the script, the shower scene in Casino Royale was
Mm.
like, was very different. And she was supposed to be in there in her underwear and stuff like that. And he like brought the emotional element of no, like she's in shock. She's just in her
Mhm.
clothes
Right.
sitting there. I'm gonna come, we're both staying there. It's just like a moment that's really beautiful that
Mhm.
like he brought that wasn't gonna be that way initially. So I think
Mhm.
all those things, having a Bond that a lot of people have said is closer to the books, a little more
Mhm.
brutal, a little more to the
Mhm.
point, I think means something as well.
Mhm.
And 3 of the 5 films being really good. So
Mhm.
your pick is still Connery, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It is. So I've thought a lot about though who ranks elsewhere. And if you would ask me purely on looks and austerity, I would pick Pierce Brosnan. Like you said, also
Sure.
does not hurt having just such a cool opening film. Goldeneye to
Yeah.
me is just classic Bond done in all the
Yeah.
right ways. Killer song, fabulous villain. Again, a Bond shadow self that like feels so real in the way
Yeah.
that um Javier Bardem's Raul Silva does. You know,
Mhm.
like that's just such a great haunting figure, and those two actors like do that so well. That Bond shadow self. Um, but like you said, in terms of like films, in terms of like acting gravitas, in terms of like excellent plot lines happening, Daniel Craig is second for me. Like overall, if I had to like,
Mhm.
choose a second Bond based on more than looks, and demeanor, it would be Daniel Craig. Sean Connery to me, there's something about him being like the OG, the original. I think there's something about like the films themselves as well. Um, just there's like a much more feeling of possibility at the time
Mm.
of like, you know, of like it doesn't need to be so complicated to be a spy. And I like that about those films. Like everything feels very real, just very normal, like, Yep, hopping a train, going across Europe, spying on different organizations, like, everything just feels like, yeah, you could absolutely do this, whereas, like, in the 21st century, it's so much more complicated and so much more involved to be a spy. Do I think Daniel Craig does that really well? Absolutely, I do. But it feels like you need more and more in the ways of like technology help to do what James
Mhm.
Bond does. So I just like
Con
the simplicity of the Connery era.
and Connery was such a brilliant cast because,
He really was.
you know, he and this is something that the producers have, like, stuck by, and I think he epitomizes the men wanna be him, women wanna be with him. It's kinda one of those
Mhm.
things, like, he's kinda the guy that can get anything done. He's kinda no F's given. He just makes it easy.
Mhm.
He gets what he wants. He's like broad-shouldered and hairy and just like a man.
Mhm.
And women are like, "Yeah, you can smack my ass. I'm good with this." Like it's it he just sells it. Really does a good job of bringing that. I mean, he's if he had been different, it would have been the type of Bonds we saw with, like, Jimmy Bond and the other
Right.
iterations they attempted to adapt the books. He brought a
Right.
personality and a machismo and a whatever to the role that defined Bond for, for everyone for decades
Right.
to come. So,
Right. Yeah, I think yeah, that's essentially what I'm drawn to in his portrayal is like the fact that like his charm, his personality is what makes a lot of this happen. It's not so much on gadgetry. There's still like cool
yeah.
gadgetry, like don't get me wrong, but like the fact that like he makes things happen. He's the one like using his charm, his wits to do things. Like I like that down to earth part of like being a spy, being James Bond.
Yep.
So I just like that about the films.